ladies. Welcome to the Sisterhood. I am your host, Michelle, coming from Connecticut, and I have my co host.
Rochelle, and I am coming from Chicago.
Welcome. We
Welcome.
are, yeah. So today, before I forget, like our page, subscribe, and comment. We'd love to hear from everybody, especially on topics and anything that you're reading. So today
Exactly.
we are sorry, I did not mean to jump in.
No
Say
problem. I
what
was
you're going
just
to
going to be
say.
like, and share.
Oh, and share. Yes, please, and share. So today we are going to be reviewing an article that Rochelle and I have read. It is called Office Housework: Why Women Are Shouldering the Burden of Non-Promotable Tasks. This is by Jessica Lindsay, and we found this on MSN.com. We will link the article in the comments so that you can read it. And we're just going to talk about really what this article is about in our thoughts and what they are actually saying in here. So I'm gonna bring this over to Rochelle to lead this conversation.
Yeah, so office housework. I like the title. It's very catchy because it first you're like housework, and then you're like, wait a minute, office housework? What is office housework? Ladies, that's the behind the scenes, right? That's scheduling the meeting, right? Coordinating everyone. I said one time to my boss, it's like I'm coordinating cats, right? Because you're setting up
Mm,
lunch dates and meetings. You're doing the tasks behind the scenes, right? Ensuring people have the material for the meeting, ensuring that if there's a PowerPoint presentation that is up, and these are additional tasks that's added to your day-to-day activity. Like in my current role, I don't have an admin, so all my travel I'm booking on my own. Anything I'm doing to set up with my, agents, insureds that I'm going to visit, that's all on me. That falls on, me to ensure that that happens. And so, or if it's an internal meeting, that would fall on me to happen, make sure we have an agenda and all that good stuff. So these are tasks that folks are doing, women like ourselves are doing, not to say that it's all inclusive to just women, some men do the same as well. But these are tasks that we typically don't put on our, mid-year or end of the year, assessment and say, hey, I did all these additional things, right? I think they lump it into in the sense of like, oh, that's part of your job function, nothing to, add in. But are these additional, and she calls them burdens, why these are non-promotable tasks, right? So, when you think about all the additional, that is you juggling, right? Additional tasks on your docket for the day. And we don't necessarily outline these things within our performance review as tasks that are conjoined with our overall job performance, right? I wonder why that is. Right? I mean, Michelle, any thoughts on that? I mean, I think it's correlation of housework that you do that you don't get the additional work, right? You make sure all the bathrooms are clean, you get the clothes out for this, you're making sure the gym bag is ready for whatever sports or activity your children have. And it's just like, oh, that's part of being a mom. It's all lumped in there, right?
hmm Yeah. When I was reading the article, I was actually in the middle of setting up a lunch meeting with an agent, and it just correlated with this and all the unseen stuff that we do. Because one of the points in here, she's like, "Oh, the cleaning up of the room in after a meeting," and I just saw myself doing that. Like setting up the meeting, cleaning up after the meeting, like ordering the food for the meeting and cleaning up after the meeting, and I just see myself doing it, and you're thinking that you're just being helpful, and you think that this is what a team player does, but
Does.
really, like, I'm not seeing any of the guys doing this, and just to circle back, that I was setting up a lunch meeting. That I was going back and forth with my agent, and I said, okay, where like we hadn't figured out where we wanted to eat. And this is a mundane task, and these are like small mundane tasks
Mundane
that just
task.
build up, build up, build up, build up. And he's like, "Oh, can we go to XYZ?" It was in his town, and I was like, "No problem. Like, do you want to set this up, or would you want me to set it up?"
He said you. I'm
He
sure of
said
it.
me. He said me.
It's his town. I think you should take the lead. I mean, that's just my thought, but hey, it's maybe a different opinion.
Yeah, yeah, you would think, and I was like, oh, no problem. I'll just hop on to Open Table and make that reservation. No big deal. But then it turned into like a 5 to 10 minute ordeal for me, and I think maybe ordeal is a bit strong of a
Yeah,
word,
right.
but my email was acting weird, and I'm like, did I get the reservation? I'm like, I didn't get the email confirmation. Like, where is it? I'm like, did I have enough people? I'm like, oh, is so and so supposed to come? And I don't know if they're supposed to come. And then, girl, it was just in my head, the burden of just trying to make this one reservation that just took way too much time.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And so you think about the additional tasks. I think for women, it's kind of assumed. I remember one time at a board meeting, we were kind of going through and having a roundtable of opinions, and someone says, "Oh, who's our secretary isn't here? Who's taking notes?" Um, and one of the male board members like, oh, pointed to like, say Sally. Sally, oh, how about you take notes? She was like, no. And then he just went around to all the women. He ditched the men. And then
Oh my.
yes, he just went to the women as if that is a, I guess in his thought and idea, that's a natural point. He's and generational, he was a boomer, right? And so all the women were
But
like, no. And
still.
I just spoke up and said, can't you take the notes? And then you can email us. And then he's like, oh, I have plenty of tasks on my plate, as we do too. Right. So it's
Right.
just really funny with regard to that, like tasks in the office. I remember early in my career, a older woman, she was like, "Don't ever bring treats to work," and I was like, "Huh?" Like, never bake
Hmm.
treats and bring them into the workplace like that. She's like, if you stop and grab donuts or what have you, that's totally fine. But she's like, people then assume like that you're a housewife and it's a task. I was like so confused. I was like, not that I was going to,
Mhm.
because I'm not a baker or anything of that nature, but I didn't correlate that with. And then she was like, then you'll kind of get typecast in the sense of like, oh, you're Sally Homemaker bringing treats to work for, the men in the office. And she was very, intentional about like after meetings, like she wouldn't stay to help clean up. She would just get up like most of the men and walk out of the room. And so, like you said, typically it's because you're just, oh, okay, it needs to be done. I'll take care of it. And then you're doing these additional tasks, what are adding up to, a couple minutes, 5 here, 10 there. But if you do it over a period of a year, that's a lot of additional time, right? That you don't even talk
Mhm.
about in your work performance, right? You don't get, you might get a thank you, but most people are gone by the time the thank you should be happening, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
that piece of it. So, when that piece of it, I think that's a really good point and a great article that she wrote around that piece of it. Like these are additional skill sets that you have, right? That we should be highlighting and that we, in a sense, should be compensated for, right? On that note, or maybe not
I,
compensation. I think our employers might say no. That's just part of the
well, I can
day to day activity, right?
I can only imagine our performance review at the end when they're like, "Well, highlight what you have done this year," and say, "Well, I have spent 1,000 minutes cleaning up after you."
And then I say that's teamwork,
Which
right? But you're
that's
like, where's the
teamwork right
team?
there. Where's
But
the
where
team?
is
Nobody's here.
team? Right. Or scheduling, like you said, scheduling the lunch, right? I just think it's when you're from out of town. Kind of think the person who you're meeting should say, "Hey, I'll take the reins," and because you don't know, maybe not know the location things, but I guess with tech savvy, it's a little easier, right? And so those tasks become very minimal in a sense because it
Mhm.
doesn't take you as long as it would had you had to pick up the phone, dial up a couple restaurants, kind of see what the availability is, make the rest,
Right.
from that piece of it. Now we can go to Open Table, make a quick,
Mhm.
reservation, click, click, click. We're done. Get the email, flip it over to the agent, and then you're off on your date. But those tasks do add up. And then after a while, it's just additional to correlate. I'm traveling next week and just trying to make sure got the hotel booked, to have my airfare booked, and of
Mhm.
course, all these for me. But then, in addition to that, I'm visiting agents, taking them out to lunch and breakfast and all that good stuff. And so I'm trying to coordinate that and who's calling the team coming. And like you said, if it's one, yeah, it's one off. But when you have multiple, like I had four. So
Mm.
that's an additional like 30 minutes on my calendar to add those tasks in too as well. So,
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that we do, and I got to circle back to that comment, the comment that you said that you had a coworker who said never come in with baked goods and stuff that you've baked at home. And I love to bake sometimes. I mean, I go fits and starts. Like I may have a year where I'm baking everything from scratch, and then I have another year where it's going to be store bought. But I just remember, I remember making cupcakes for a coworker for his birthday
hmm,
as a gesture of just being nice.
nice. Hmm.
A my manager will still talk about it to this day.
Why?
Will like that's part of my identity, which is not really a part of my identity. It's just like a hobby,
Hmm.
and it's not a part of my identity at work. I was just being nice to my coworker, and he just keeps repeating it. He's like, "You should bring cupcakes here. You should bring cupcakes to this meeting, and all this. You should do this." And I'm like,
No, because that's an
I'm
additional task, right? You're like,
that's
those cupcakes didn't make themselves, right? They didn't
yeah. It's
magically
like, well,
appear.
there were other comments like, "Oh, you should probably be professional." I'm like, no, that takes the joy out of doing anything that I like to do. I try to monetize it,
I
but
quit.
that's a whole nother conversation on that one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I
But
think in the article too, is like these tasks are not central to the organization's mission,
no.
right? And it's just the fallout piece of it when you think about the additional pieces. But somebody has to do it, right? There has to be
Mhm.
someone who has to do it from that piece of it. So, like you said, in the sense of the vein of being a team player, I think these responsibilities typically fall to the women. Although you may not be married or have children, right? You may be a single woman, but
Mhm.
it may still fall to you because in the eyesight, sometimes it's like those tasks. Oh, that's a womanly task to do, like being in an office in the 1950 when you were just a secretary, you were taping and, you did the personal
Mhm.
errands and you were a personal assistant and you just did these tasks here. They hired someone to do.
Right.
When you think
Right.
about it in, generations ago, these were tasks that they hired someone to do. And typically it will be women who would fill these roles, right? And then over the years,
Mhm.
as more women entered the workforce, those roles became to be obsolete, but the tasks were still remaining. And I think as we start doing more technologies, they're like, oh yeah, we got more technology now, so these things are picked up, but there's still tasks to be done. So why are not we leveraging that and adding that to our resume and our reviews and things of that nature? It would be funny, interesting if we did start to add that, and what reactions we'll get.
I know it would be very interesting, but I'm trying to figure out how do you even word that? Like, how do you word
Yeah,
it in a way where you could where it could be received in
I
a positive way without sounding condescending to, I don't know, your manager or somebody
right.
whoever you report to.
I think our last guest, Stacy, may be a good person to canoodle with on this one of how do you create like add these tasks to your two belt, right? To say that these are additional tasks I did. I think you would probably add, additional teamwork to support the team or something to that piece of it to say, hey, I've outlined or I've taken a task to do that. It's just an interesting article from that piece of it, something to noodle on, something for you to think about when you're in the office and you have a meeting, like who's doing what task and how is it getting done and who's setting up what, right? And so it'll be a
Right.
very interesting dynamic. Most of the time, like definitely at board meetings that some of the boards I sit on and some of the boomers, typically it's falling to a woman. I've just noticed that even sending meetings outside of our work.
Well, the board that I sit on, I'm trying to think back as to what happened. Well, no, it was the secretary who did it all. You know what?
Hmm.
I can't even say she's the one who did it all. She's the amount of stuff that she did because she just recently left. She did She did a lot. She was the actually she was the administrative assistant. She was
Assistant.
not the secretary. Sorry about that. I said that wrong. But she did it wrong. She did that. And I'm thinking right now because I'm setting up a meeting with two other leaders. I co-lead a group of emerging leaders at my company, and it's a 2-year cohort, and we are doing our first in-person meeting
Hmm.
in June. And so as I think about the relationship with this article, I'm the one who's coordinating all the food for all of our lunches, and I'm coordinating like a couple. We split out a couple of the topics so that each one of us have has ownership to it of it. But I feel already burdened to
With the
clean up
additional, uh with the
because
additional
I'm in charge
tasks.
of that food.
Right.
And I'm
Exactly.
like,
Exactly.
we haven't even done it. We haven't even done it yet.
Right. And that's the thing too. I think most of us don't mind as women. We don't mind doing those extra tasks, right? But they're diminished in that sense of like someone
Yeah.
has to do it, it'll fall to the woman in the room or the women in the room, but you never receive compensation, you never receive anything, potentially a thank you maybe, right? I remember on the board
Right.
we were having several board members exiting and male board member says, oh, we should do something nice for them. Okay, great. Great
I'm like,
idea.
good.
Like he
Great.
wanted to do like a plaque or something to that magnitude. And I'm like, okay, well, great idea. It's your idea. You run with it, right? Nope, he directed it to a woman. Like, oh,
Oh my
XYZ.
god.
Hey, make sure. And guess what? The task was done by a woman. And it was just like, okay, well, it got done and completed. It was this idea. It would be the difference too. If I had a great idea, like, oh, I think we should have rainbows, right? I would go out and go
Uh-huh.
get the rainbows for the meeting, right? I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go get rainbows for the meeting so we can have rainbows at the meeting. It was my idea. It's a task, right? A checklist task to do. But it's so funny how when I think about it, the wavelength of how men and women think differently. Like it was the idea that a male board member came up with. If it's your idea, I think you should lead that. But it was given to a woman to lead. I guess we do better in ordering and coming up with gift ideas.
Oh, just all the path.
But yeah,
Look,
so
you can open up the catalog. Come on.
exactly, and point to what you want to give and send. But yeah, so it's very
Hmm.
interesting article. We wanted to kind of talk to you guys, the audience, would about from that piece of it, and just thought provoking. Definitely make sure that you comment, like and share the content of this discussion and topic of those additional tasks that are on your plate.
Yes, thank you. And we want to hear your engagement, just like Rose said. Please comment because this is the stuff that this is part of what we are shouldering and part of our burden within the office place and the thoughts of being helpful and a team player and engaged. And we're taking on a lot of unrecognized, uncompensated extra work that we need to recognize that sometimes we don't need to do all of that. So please comment on this particular article, and we would love to engage. Um, I'm at a loss for words right now, girl.
No worries. We would like to definitely hear your thoughts around this, the office housework. What are your thoughts? And share comment, share and like us as well. Thanks for your time and we look forward to seeing you at our next episode.
Thank you. Bye.
Um,